Hello, welcome to Beyond the Edge. I'm your host, Brandy Deutsch.
Hi, I'm Dee Dee DeMayo, your co-host, Light, Love, and Blessings.
Well, I'm so happy you're here with us today. We have a really interesting show. And at first glance, you might think, well, it's kind of a little off topic than what we're used to doing. But once we get into it, I really think that you will come to see that it's really not. I mean, today we're talking about dispelling mitigation myths. And mitigation is a very interesting topic that not a lot of people know about. And so we thought we would bring on somebody who's an expert. Her name is Victoria Rusk, and she wrote an amazing book. And we're going to start talking about mitigation myths and getting rid of those myths. So let me tell you a little bit about Victoria. So she's a mitigation specialist with 10 years of experience in the legal field, and she's the author of the book, The Handbook for Mitigation. She's also the founder of Heart of Justice. Her passion for justice and fair sentencing, her drive to empower attorneys and defendants, and her working knowledge of the system, intricacies of the legal system, inspired her to write this book. And so this is a practical guide for the communities around criminal cases. So I'm so excited to present you guys Victoria Rusk. Hi, Victoria.
Hi, Brandy. Hi, Dee
Good
Dee.
morning.
Hi,
Good morning.
everyone. Good morning.
Welcome. You are so welcome here today. And so I'm so excited to learn more about what you do and how you do it and how you're impacting communities that affect criminal cases. First and foremost, what is mitigation? A lot of people don't even know. So tell us, what is mitigation in your own words?
Excuse me. A mitigation in my own words. Okay, so when someone is charged with a crime, they normally get an attorney and, of course, an investigator to investigate the crime, what the police said that they did, maybe even interview people who the police didn't interview. On a criminal defense case, they can also hire a mitigation specialist. And mitigation investigation is the real why behind the alleged crime. So I say alleged crime because they're not convicted yet. It's most important to utilize a mitigation investigation before the first trial, or maybe even the only trial. Mitigation investigation is learning about the person, because we cannot mitigate a crime, we can mitigate a person. And mitigation evidence and information is utilized by the criminal defense attorney at the punishment stage of the trial, or at the plea bargaining time when they're trying to discuss if a person will plea or the DA will offer a plea. And so when you learn about your client and who they are and how they got to be in this position and their behavioral patterns, their mental health capacity, their education level, their medical background, you can maybe even dig into the real mitigating circumstances of the actual crime. And we utilize this information to get the best sentence or punishment that we can for this unique human being.
Mitigation sounds like a very intimate process.
Yeah, it really
I'm just
it
saying, right?
is. Yeah, it is.
I mean, you just said, well, we look at their behavioral patterns, we look at their family history, we look at these different things. The first thought in my head when you say that is that sounds a lot like social work, but mitigation is not social work, is it?
No, but you know, a lot of social workers do mitigation, and it's a really wonderful fit. But I wouldn't say that mitigation came from social work. Actually, the grandmother of mitigation was an anthropologist.
Oh, wow.
hmm So I have my background in journalism, and that really helps to understand, how do we organize information? How do you interview people? How do you, prepare a person who's never heard this story, like a jury or a judge, for them to be able to gather the information to make an educated decision for our client. So there's a variety of backgrounds that are really beneficial to the skill set of a mitigation specialist. And I would say social work is really a strong one, but so is psychology, so is a mental health expert, so is could be a probation officer or a former jailer or a private investigator. Lawyers do mitigation as well.
So you and aren't you a private investigator?
Yes, I do have a PI license.
Okay, and I would think that would help a lot in these kinds of situations where you need to gather this information and to know how to do that, right?
Well, I would say, yeah, the PI license really helps me to find people, and my and that skill set really helps me to understand, how crime works, right? But the private investigator for the criminal defense team is looking at the who, the what, the where, the when, and the how, and the mitigation specialist is the why.
Got it. So I'm going to come back to like different types of people who would do mitigation work. I'll come back to that later because I think it's important for people to know who can do it. But I want to know why you wrote this book. Why did you write the Handbook for Mitigation?
Yay! I love this little book. The reason why I wrote this book, honestly, is because since nobody really knows what mitigation is for the most part, if you're outside the criminal defense arena, I would still say that it's even getting discovered within our field of work a lot too. But I would be out working and nobody knew what I was or what I was doing and didn't really necessarily understand why I needed to know all of this stuff and what are you going to do about this and why does it matter, who raised me? My son is the way that he is. And it's just important to have a tool like this book out in the world so that people who don't get a mitigation specialist for their case maybe can support their attorney and what they need to do to properly prepare for punishment. Because the thing is, if you get indicted, if you're charged with a crime and you get arrested and you get indicted, the likelihood that you're going to get punished is like 99%. People are not walking out of jail and they're not getting walked out of their trial by not guilty very often. Most
Well,
people are getting punished.
one thing I like about the fact that you not only wrote the book is yesterday when we were talking, you had said you wrote the book on a specific age level because,
Oh,
and so that the average person can understand. It's not, rocket science or brain surgery trying to understand law. And I've found now, while I haven't dealt with criminal law on a very intense level until recently, in family law and property laws, it's people's lack of knowledge. When they go to an attorney, they don't know what to ask for. They don't know that they can tell that attorney, look, it's no until we go and beat the pavement or we change it or we approach it this way. And this is why I want to do it this way. And if you have an attorney that's telling you no and doesn't want to think outside the box, maybe find another one because you need every resource, you know?
Yeah,
I
and this
agree.
sounds like an amazing resource.
Mhm.
I mean,
Yes.
the book itself. Just we'll go a little more into the book in just a couple of
Yeah.
minutes because I'm really blown away by what you've done with such. How many pages is the book?
It's like 90 something.
Like 90 pages. Like it's such a small, but there's power. There's
It's
so much power.
85.
85 pages.
85
Wow.
pages.
But it's power packed. I mean,
Yeah.
just you telling me what's inside this book, I'm gonna get it. I'm gonna
Yeah.
get it just because you never know who might need this as a resource. And so who is this book for,
Yeah,
Victoria?
this book is for anyone accused of a crime or a loved one accused of a crime. That's who I wrote it for. So I did write it. Thank you, Dee Dee, for bringing that up. That I did write it with the most like eighth grade English, basically. Now, mitigation isn't an eighth grade word, but
Right.
all the other words around it are. And it was just so important to me that everybody have access to this information, so that that way they can help themselves or they can help their loved ones. And a lawyer could hand this over to someone and be like, Mrs. Jones, would you please read this over the weekend and see if you can help us help your loved one? And they can do some mitigation stuff on their own to support their attorney, or then they would have the knowledge and know-how to hire a mitigation specialist to help them in this
Yeah.
crisis, because being arrested is a traumatic experience. And then what happens with shame and blame and guilt and regret and anger, we have to unpack those things and work through those emotions to get the best outcome and to have integrity within our criminal defense team.
Yeah.
That's a good point, Victoria. Would you be willing to talk about an experience? Like, let's talk about a real life case scenario. Pick one, either one out of the book or
Yeah,
just,
I'm looking at the one in the book.
that would be
One in the
great,
book
because
that
I
I would
want
love to
people.
share.
That's perfect. I really want people to understand what happens and step by step what would happen if someone got convicted of some kind of crime and how mitigation could help them.
Okay, so in the state of Texas, in particularly, if you're charged with a felony, the range of punishment is 5 to 99 years. So if you're charged with that, that's the range of punishment. Now, depending on how many other criminal cases you have before or whatever. But this this story in particular is a fictitious name, Sonny. He's 20 years old when he's arrested for aggravated robbery. And in Sonny's case, the prosecutor was going for a maximum charge and the maximum punishment. And the plea negotiations were kind of being stalled. So I was brought into the case and I interviewed Sonny and all his family. And of course, I could see, that he's 20 years old. His frontal lobe isn't fully developed. He's, making choices that he doesn't necessarily understand the repercussions of those choices to a certain degree. Look into the parenting style, look into, who was his caretakers? Where did he experience loss in his life? How did he get caught up in this situation, and he was, frankly, young and dumb, and we're all been there before.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the defense, thought that, he should get a second chance, and we need to, convince the prosecutor, who, after all, didn't know Sonny or his life circumstances like, we do. And so the mitigation investigation revealed that Sonny, had lost a parent whenever he was really young, and the surviving parent really micromanaged the children because they were so scared and nervous about, I got to raise these kids like my spouse would have wanted me to.
Mm-hmm.
And so kind of that helicopter parenting. And what happens with helicopter parenting, though it is out of love, really what happens is that child doesn't get the opportunity to get self-trust, or it's delayed. The self-trust is delayed. So then they follow the crowd a little bit longer into their 20s, and it can affect it later in life too, or that they have an imbalanced relationship with one of the parent, so they're a mama's boy or a daddy's girl, even in their own marriages. Okay. So this doesn't even have to be criminally related. This is just how things are. And so, but in particular in this case, we had to have a come to Jesus with his surviving parent and say, hey, like, this is what I'm picking up from all these different areas. And you raised a wonderful child who got caught up in a situation that we're trying to help them with. And I just want to bring these things to your attention. And what happened whenever, he was asked, come along to this, da, da, da. And of course, he was a big, handsome young man. And so he looked like he was, could be the bodyguard of the actual crime that was going down. He was a co-defendant. And thank God that the affidavits that everybody wrote to support him and his character and who he was and how he got to be there, telling the story about losing a parent, telling the story about how the surviving parent parented Sonny, helped the DA really know who this person was and what kind of family this person was. And all that kind of put together, honestly, the DA did not, he downgraded the charge.
Wow.
And so he was able to get probation.
Wow. And they were going for the maximum sentence.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sure, a felony, 5 years. Well,
Mhm.
and you know, this young man would have been starting college a lot later in life, you know,
If
perhaps.
at
And
all. If at
Yeah,
all.
if
if
at
at
all,
all.
right. Because going to prison is a traumatic experience. So you don't know how you're going to be when you come out of that. So if he would have gotten sentenced for the aggravated robbery, and you can be charged with aggravated robbery even if you weren't the one with the gun, but you were with somebody
Right.
that had a gun.
Right.
And so he could have gotten 10 years. He could have gotten 20 years. You know, he could have gotten 5 and been out by the time he was 25 or 26. And that would have been the best case scenario. But the mitigation helped the DA see this person as a human and maybe even identify their own stupid, dumb, young stuff, you
Mhm.
know?
Mhm.
Everybody screws up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I,
Yeah.
Everybody screws up. I mean, it's particularly when we're young, right? I
Mhm.
mean, we do stupid stuff. We just do. And like you said, the frontal lobe isn't fully developed. We don't understand how our actions are going to come back later and have consequences. So
Right.
everything you're saying really puts a light bulb in my head, because I'm like, wow, looking at a person from all aspects. And I love psychology. I've majored in psychology, and this is something also, sociology dips into, is
Mhm.
how does the environment affect the person. And without that information, without that knowledge, people are, and just people in general, I think sometimes are quick to judge. If somebody commits a crime, oh, they're a bad person. And what you're doing around mitigation is, listen, they're not a bad person. They did something stupid. They did a bad thing. But it doesn't mean that they can't be, what do we want to say? That they can't be, um,
given a second chance.
that
Because
exactly.
we took that one word
Exactly.
off the table the other day, because it's not, the person has to decide and be willing to rehabilitate or find a new way of living.
Exactly. See, my mind was to go to
Yeah.
rehabilitate, but
Yeah.
we have to change
Yeah.
that language.
Yeah.
We have to
Yeah.
change that language, because it's not about rehab. I mean, rehabilitation in and of itself. I like recovery. We use the word recovery,
Mhm.
or discovery,
Discovery.
Right.
uncovery.
Discovery.
Wow.
What That's a universal need that we all have.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And so
Mhm.
with that, here's the next thing we need to talk about is, how many times in cases where there's been criminal case or violent crime where there was mental illness.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, most of my clients have either a traumatic brain injury, mental illness, behavioral disorder, or an intellectual disability. So, not, I would say 90% of my clients are living with an extreme case of anxiety, all the way to a traumatic brain injury, multiple brain injuries. And then how
Yeah.
do we discover those things and bring them to the light? And
Exactly.
then that they are actually mitigating and not aggravating, because the DA can take some of this information and flip it on us. And we have to be so thoughtful of that and be prepared for that to give our client the best possible outcome.
That's an interesting point. Okay, somebody diagnosed with bipolar,
Hmm.
and that's proven not only through their history, but an official, psychologist, psychiatrist testing. How can they flip that when it's beyond the person's control?
As soon as you commit a crime, you're an evil monster, period. So you've done something that society does not approve of, and why. And being bipolar is just an excuse, because there's so many people that have bipolar or schizophrenia that don't kill anybody.
Wow.
That's where it comes. Like
Wow.
that's the argument right there,
I'm
honey.
Wow.
like, yes, and you're right. But again, taking the fact that, it's the circumstances around
Yes,
what
it is.
brought the person to the why.
Yeah.
And, and I think what's really good, if people are willing to do it for that loved one, is to step up and tell the truth. Yeah, I was a screwed up mom. I drank, or I beat my kids, or I, wasn't home, or whatever the case may be.
And some
The
of that could be,
Mhm.
yeah, mama
Mhm.
wasn't home, or daddy, was absent because of his own addiction or
Mhm.
struggle, and then how many of people who are charged with crimes or who are in prison right now or in jail right now are living in the crisis of poverty? And then what does that do to you? I mean, boom, boom, boom. So I can't blame mama for being, drunk or anything, it is what it is. It's not what
Yeah.
we wanted. It's not what we needed, but that's what happened.
Yeah.
And the other thing is that I think when I think about this kind of blame game that people can get sucked into so easy,
Mhm.
um, I have to say too that you can have a fine and dandy mama and daddy. But however that child interprets the situation becomes a
Mhm.
belief and part of their behavioral pattern.
Yeah, I had that conversation once with I was really irritated because I was like, we were at dinner and this couple, and then the guy I was with, they were saying, well, if you do this or that, you're going to have these perfect kids. I was furious. I said, let me just tell you, you don't know who God's going to put in your home when you have a child, and you learn how to parent them or you don't. And, they just sometimes are a certain makeup, and it doesn't matter. And you just have to let their journey happen. And you can't live with the what ifs and shoulda, coulda, wouldas, you know?
Yeah,
Uh,
exactly.
so, wow.
So,
Yeah.
Victoria, you mentioned brain injury.
Yeah.
I don't think people understand how common that is.
Mhm.
And I say that because even just recently, we had someone on our show who was in our addiction recovery
Mhm.
series. And the first thing he says was, I had shaken baby syndrome.
Yes.
Oh,
On the onset of his life,
Yes.
yeah.
he had a brain injury.
Mm.
And it led to a number of things. I mean, there was abuse, of course, and then but it does something to the brain,
Yes.
right?
Yes. And I just want to say, so brain development 101. Okay. Anyone who works in criminal defense really needs to know how the brain develops in the different age stages, going through all the way to age 26. So when you got a little baby that is, basically the brain is 85% developed by age 3. So whenever you have a little baby who has a brain injury, then a lot of times, like I have experienced that it can put them in survival mode.
Mhm.
So then they're not really even able to thrive because all their energy is going to try to heal the brain injury. And then if you don't even know your baby has it.
Yeah, I mean, a brain injury can happen and people don't even realize it,
it
like, a lot of people go to theme parks and they're snatched around on all these rides and stuff. I mean,
yeah.
Or
it's
sports,
just our
football.
Yeah,
sports,
football,
football. Mhm.
exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
motorcycle, car accident.
Yeah.
If you grow up in, like in the 80s, then you were getting in fights all the time. You know what I'm saying? Like,
True.
it was just that was kind of the
70s,
thing.
80s. Yeah.
Discipline was a lot different back then.
Yeah.
You could
Mhm.
just a pure accident at work, forgetting to wear your helmet when you're riding a bicycle, or when you're at work and something falls on your head, and then you go to the doctor, but it doesn't work out for you. I saw that y'all had an episode on the on racist medical industry,
Yeah.
like the racism in the medical industry. Bam, you are a black or a brown person and you have a head injury, and you go into the to the hospital, you go to your primary care physician, and they don't check everything or do everything that they
Mhm.
should do. And you might not realize it yourself, like you have a headache, but it would be years later that
Mhm.
something happens where you can be accused of a violent crime.
Mhm.
Wow.
Yeah, the impact is lifelong,
It sure is. And
Yeah.
you don't know how severe it is until it
Yeah.
is. But then I just want to say, having a brain injury in a developmental stage as a child, whether it's at birth or at 6 or at 12, if you're put in a coma, or if you have multiple concussions because grew up in the South and you were in football since you were a toddler, it really does change your behavior, because you could be suffering from mild depression and don't know it.
Mhm.
And
Wow.
then and as a society, we are not trained in understanding mental health first aid. So we don't know when we are seeing someone or not seeing someone in the condition that they actually could be in.
That's right. That's
And
right.
that's all just pure innocent,
Yeah.
maneuvering this life, just pure innocence. Everyone is,
Right.
honestly. And then whenever you get yourself put into a situation because of life circumstances or choices that you have made that led you to this time in your life, and you don't know what you're going to do until you're in that situation, really.
That's right. Absolutely. You want to add to that, Didi?
Well, yeah, I mean, in thinking about that, how life's patterns, and the environment and conditions of your health and things like that bring people to doing something. That's one of the reasons why. I'm curious how mitigation, if you've had a case where someone is just mean, someone is just they're going to kill folks. I mean, what and you can't find physical evidence or anything. How do you approach something like that?
Okay.
I mean, that's I'm
It's
that
not true. I just want to say that. Like,
okay.
psychopath, sociopath, all that. Those are real sexy words, but in my life experience, in my, career,
Mhm.
the people who are have real homicidal ideations
Okay.
and can't control them have a traumatic brain injury in a
Okay.
developmental stage. That's my own personal experience. I don't have data and all that to back that up, right? So
But you've been
but
able
I would say that would be the only person or type of person or case or scenario that would have that. That means it doesn't mean that every person with a traumatic brain injury at 10 or 8 years old or whatever. No, it depends on the human being,
right.
so unique to our thumbprint that their brain would develop in such the way around and through that brain injury that homicidal ideations is a part of the brain development. Like, it goes into the way. And so then they have the urges, don't know what to do with the urges, don't know if they can or when they can seek help. It is only a matter of time that they will try to kill someone. So
And
that is very rare, very rare. All these other brains, they can be cured and helped and
mhm.
rehabilitated or go into recovery stage. They can learn coping mechanisms. There's so many things that our magical brain can do. But, in particular, in criminal defense, I would say a person who suffers or living with homicidal ideations, they either learn to cope with it and be a part of society, or they go to prison. Because it's really hard it's just like a person who has suicidal ideations.
Okay.
Same, but different.
Yeah.
It's going to be self-harm or harm somebody else. But when we look into this person's life and how they got to be there, it could be a mental illness that is, predisposed. So it runs in the family, or it could be stress so heavy and so severe that the brain is then, the chemistry of the brain is shifting and changing under that stress, and just keep on living because we're such magical creatures that
Yeah.
we are programmed to survive.
That's
And
right.
then hopefully get to a point where we can thrive.
I'm just curious too. Do you find that a lot of those people are someone that might be considered addicted to drugs as trying to cope? They become. I mean, is it a crossover, a mix at all?
No.
Okay. I'm just
Everybody is unique to their
okay.
thumbprint,
Okay.
honestly. And the person that is on my heart right now that I'm thinking about, no drugs.
Wow.
So no addiction, but it can, a head injury in a younger stage or whatever can lead to spiritual awakenings.
Yeah.
It can lead to schizophrenia, whatever you want to call it.
We'll get into that too in a couple of
Yeah.
minutes because I want to talk about that. That's a very interesting point. Before we do, I want to get a little bit on the extreme side. So I love what you say that we mitigate the human, not the crime. Okay, that's what makes this to me a very compassionate practice, right? So I want to talk about death row cases. So
Okay.
according to the Texas Department of Criminal Justice, there are about 204 people on death row right now in the state of Texas.
Wow.
And in your opinion, is mitigation a typical practice for those convicted of a violent crime? But if not, I want to know if you think that's in part why we have such a high number of people on death row.
Well, mitigation, the American Bar Association passed the mitigation guidelines for capital cases in 2003. So before 2003, which there are plenty of people who have been on death row for 20 years on our Texas death row, but so they maybe didn't get as much mitigation as somebody who had a trial like in 2010 or 2011 or 2020.
Wow.
So, I would say that my case that I started that went to trial, a death penalty case in Fort Bend County, I started that case in 2017. We went to trial in 2019, and I spent 1,000 hours on mitigation, and he did not go to death row.
Good.
So I would say that other cases maybe now the trial I was a part of, there was a trial that same week in Harris County, the county right next door, and that person did get the death sentence.
Wow.
And had probably just as much mitigation, right? So I would say that the people who are on death row, more than likely, they do have a certain amount of mitigation, or they would have won one of their appeals for not preparing for sentencing, or that appeal is going, is being presented to the Court of Criminal Appeals, present day sometime,
Mm-hmm.
So I would say that recently, what I've been noticing the most in the news is people who are appealing on intellectual disability and winning, and then their client being removed from death row into general population and serving a life sentence because they are actually intellectually disabled, and it wasn't proved at the trial level, it was proved in the appellate process. And I have one of those cases myself right now that we won the appeal, and we are heading to a hearing sometime this year that the case got moved back to the trial court, and we get to present in front of the judge how or why and when, all the the case basically is that this person is intellectually disabled, and it is against the law to execute a person with a lower IQ and low adaptive behavior deficits,
Yeah, like who knows that, right? Like
Right.
that's information people really need to know.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm curious too, because I know, you just talked about and covered the appeal level, meaning, they've already been sentenced and they're sitting there fighting that case, and you can help turn the tide on that. What about people that maybe haven't appealed, and could mitigation help someone that might be coming up for parole or probation, as far as representing their need for a second chance or something? Would y'all be able to work with people on that level as well? Because they have to go.
I just want to say, I just want to repeat that mitigation is best at the trial level.
Yes.
Winning appeal is really slim. For parole, this is a different audience.
Yes.
And so thinking about how am I going to make the parole board a hero that they want to let my loved one out? And that's kind of the viewpoint that I advise to people. I don't really work on parole cases because mitigation is not powerful there. And you can hire, services to help you put together the best parole packet. And those people definitely might be using mitigation skills, but what they have to prove and show and secure is that this person's going to be out in the free world, and the free world is going to be safe. So where are they going to live, and what community do they have around them that's going to help the world stay safe from this convicted, whatever you want to call them. So, it's a little different, but it really is about safety. And so that way that the person, so let me put on my parole hat, like I'm the parole person, I'm the gatekeeper, I'm the decision maker. What's going to make me feel like I'm doing the right thing by letting this person out Do they have all the things that they need? Did they complete all their classes? How have their behavior been in prison? You know, I mean, it's just a different question, I guess, that needs to be answered for that decision maker.
Yeah.
In the case of parole, you can write letters, you can say all this stuff, but do not, in my opinion, do not talk about the trial. And this person's not guilty. They are not trying to hear that.
Yes.
Right. So, and Victoria, you're so knowledgeable in all these different areas of law and criminal cases. I really hope people can utilize.
And I am not a lawyer. And I
Right.
don't give law advice or lawyer
Right.
advice. I give how to organize information advice, how to humanize the person advice. I've never been to law school, and I will never go.
Amen.
Yeah.
And I only say that, like, I love lawyers. I have friends who are lawyers.
Me too. I love lawyers too.
I love lawyers. I mean, they are amazing people.
They are the first responders of our time.
They are, right? And I
Yes,
mean,
they are.
To come to people's defense, right?
Yes.
And to help society and to help people. They are amazing people.
Warriors.
They are.
In my community, we call them warriors.
They are. They get in there and they are, beating the pavement for their clients. And just like anything else, though, there are good lawyers and there are lawyers who can take advantage of people. So I think it's really good to have your own knowledge base. So what you're doing and trying to educate people through your book, I think it is so, so important and it's crucial. Because then when you're empowered, when we're educated, then we not only feel confident, but we have what we need to move forward, either for ourselves or for our loved ones. Yes. And so speaking of our loved ones, the people, it seems like this would be an amazing book for the families, for the people who love people who have been convicted or go to trial at the onset. So I want to keep getting that in people's heads. So like, this is the important piece. The moment someone is possibly charged, thank you, that's what I was looking for. The moment someone is charged, that's when you want to get this book and you start reading beforehand, but that's when you want to start thinking about mitigation.
You're right. I mean, this book isn't for anyone who's not interested in criminal defense, right? So yeah, if you are charged with a crime, read this book. If you love someone charged with a crime, read this book. If you have people in your family who've been to prison, let me tell you, I'm not being ugly. I want to say with all compassion, the apple does not fall far from the tree. And it is part of, even your own generational curses. So consider that this might be something that you want to think about for your own family. And even if they already are convicted or in prison, just to know that this is available for not just you, but the community around you. So if you're a counselor at a school, if you're a professor, if you're whatever, if you are a possible juror someday, you should be like thinking, what's the mitigation? Where is the mitigation? If they haven't presented mitigation, then how can I properly sentence this person not knowing who they are, unique to them?
Absolutely.
So yes, I mean, I would say, when you go hire a lawyer, get this book and read this book. Give this book to your lawyer. Like I've only sold 150 copies, and how many lawyers are graduating from college? You know what I'm saying? This fall or this spring.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
It's important that the new lawyers, the ones that are coming out and trying to change things and represent people, get this. But the old dogs as well, excuse my terminology, but the ones that are set in their ways and really maybe looking for a resource to help their clients.
Well, and most older attorneys, especially ones who practice criminal capital cases, they know what mitigation is. We go to seminars for what mitigation is and how to utilize it and what to do. But there's no handbook that's ever written until now.
Yeah. I'm really thinking I might invest in all the Montgomery County ones that are court appointed, finding out how many there are on staff and buying them a book because they need it. I recently had a conversation with prosecuting attorney, and they can't really put anything on the table that matters or will help. They're just looking. I'm just going to say it true. They're looking for open and shut shit. Excuse me. They want it to be cut and dry, not take their time because they have mountains of cases. They want to put the best deal they can, look good in court, and hopefully, these attorneys that are the defense attorneys will open their eyes and say, no, that's not the best deal for my client.
Well, and I just want to say that's the formula for mass incarceration.
Mm-hmm.
So we are in a system that, I don't necessarily like to call it broken because it's operating the way that it was planned.
Right.
Like people go to prison and we make money off of them. Hello. So, yes. I'm not an expert in that field to be able to go through all the scholarly stuff, but I just want to say as a person working in this field, that's exactly what is happening. And so we have in this system that we are in, the defense attorneys, they have so many clients and there's not enough to go around. And so then they are like these plea factories.
Mm-hmm.
Courts
Yes.
are turned into plea factories. And so
Yes.
then more and more people are going to prison because they just don't want to sit in jail any longer and they want to finish that. Or if they plea out, then maybe they can get out of jail, which would be much more comfortable. They just want to go home.
Yes.
And so, goodness gracious, if every person in Harris County or Montgomery County or Fort Bend County demanded to have a trial, the system would implode.
Yeah, I definitely would. And, I've been privy and a witness to, recently just such cases where they're just open and shut. And the judge, while they're sitting on the bench and have the right and authority to say, well, talk to me about your well-being. Are you well? Are you taking medication? Do you need, nobody represents the client really, it's just.
Well, and some defense attorneys or public defenders, their hands are tied in that way because they have 150 clients.
Yeah.
Right.
But and again, it's maybe even getting the books into the county level of the jails and stuff to because they are able to get books and read.
Yes.
And help people prepare for their trial, because attorneys, while they're necessary and do a good job most times, there are some that they're just like the DA. They just want to open and shut case.
Right. I understand.
And they don't call like family members back that reach out and say, hey, I've got information. Can I help? It's a
well, and
stone
that's
wall.
where this book can honestly kind of close that gap just a little bit. You know what I'm saying? And I've had a lawyer be like, what are you doing trying to start fights between clients and their attorneys? And I'm like, no. I said, first off, those clients were going to fight their attorney anyways. What I would be doing and what is happening here is just to lift up a little bit of accountability in a field that really needs some accountability. And if I get, and if my book sells and this happens and this many people read it and it starts to create, whatever, and I get blacklisted, well, so be it. There's other stuff for me to do.
Well,
but it's just
we'll just have a running blacklist of people that we refer because, I guess we are considered the black sheep because we want to turn the tide. We want to make the change. We want to make the world work for everybody.
Right on.
Exactly.
Right on. And I do have lawyers that I recommend and a process that I recommend on how to find the best attorney for you. The thing is that if we have transparent, authentic conversations with our clients and their loved ones, and they can have those conversations with us too, that trust and integrity is the invisible stuff that is supporting the best outcome in a plea bargain or in a trial.
Right. That's absolutely right. And Victoria, you're at the forefront of this mitigation advocacy. And I think people really need to understand how important this process is. And for those who are interested in this kind of work, is there a certification? Is there some kind of process that someone can go through to get started with this?
Well, there's no licensure for mitigation at this time. So people becoming a
Just let
thank
you
you.
know.
Thank you. So there is no licensure at this time, but you can get a PI license, and that kind of helps you with that, or be a social worker and have your license, and that can help with that. But there's webinars and seminars for people to learn the information right now. I created my own contribution to this avenue of getting into mitigation with Mitigation University. It's an online course that is 6 videos, 20 to 30 minutes apiece, with worksheets attached to
Wow.
the curriculum so that you can get through the program just fine at your own pace. And then worksheets about how to build your business and
Wow.
what it takes to build the business. And then it comes with 3 um, consultations with me. So 3 1-hour consultations with me, and all that bundled together is $1,000.
Wow,
Wow. That's
that's a small price for a huge investment. I don't know if that
True.
comes out translated right.
Your first case will pay for that course.
Yeah,
wow. That's
amazing,
exciting.
Yeah.
amazing.
Well, that's just another avenue for special. So now, social workers don't get paid very much, right? I mean, I'm just saying it depends, right? Especially just out of college, this is a great way for social workers to get a little bit extra um, knowledge and information, and to help people in a little bit different way. I
Mhm.
think
Right.
that's super exciting. That is amazing that you
Yeah.
offer that for people.
Well, and my thing is that too, like I've had people be like, "Can I be your intern, or are you hiring?" No, I'm not. I think you need to be an entrepreneur. I think you need to let me help you. You can become a consulting client of mine, but I can assist in that. I even offer once a month free consulting in a webinar on the 22nd of every month at 8
Oh,
p.m. So anybody who wants to learn how to get into this business, they can go to heartofjustice.org or mitigationuniversity.com and get in contact with me, and I can send them the link to register for those free webinars that I offer. And that's the best way that I can really contribute to getting more people into the field. Otherwise, I'm going to say, read this book, go to this webinar, connect with this nonprofit, um, mingle and meet criminal defense attorneys, and give them my book and tell them that this is my resume, and this is my career path that I want to take. Hire me, help me, let me help you help them. And I'm happy to help you help yourself and build a career or a firm or whatever you want. What
yeah.
I want to do is build information products. What I want to do is do mitigation investigations and mitigation consulting.
Mhm.
And I want to help people, because at some time the court appointed system is going to, I don't want to say it's going to run out of money, but do we provide enough funding for mitigation and all the mitigation funding needed? No.
Yeah.
It's only a certain amount of cases, each quarter or whatever. I don't know how they calculate it, but not a lot of lawyers are requesting for the court to pay for mitigation. And so there's I would say even more now, public defender's office who have a mitigation specialist on staff. Great. But they need like 12.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah. Go ahead, Dee.
It's inundated. I mean, the list I'm just blown away when I pull up court dockets. Sometimes I'm like, oh my God, they don't even have time to present stuff unless they do trial by jury. There's nothing holding someone's attention long enough to listen to a case.
Mm-hmm.
So trying to get information there so that it can be worked out before you go to trial
Right. Oh
is
man.
so much
Yes.
more effective for the client or the
And I just
person.
want to say too, getting into this business and learning all the life lessons that I had to
Yeah,
learn starting my own business, and then now my standard of practice is high. So, I weed out attorneys whenever they call me, of course, because, you're wanting me to get on a capital murder case and you have trial in 6 months. No. The only way
that's
you'll learn is if I say no. So it's, I want to be hired as soon as you are hired, because the time factor in mitigation is the most valuable, because somebody might tell us something or tell me something in an interview 2 weeks before trial that they couldn't tell me 2 weeks after we met, because rapport is necessary.
Yeah, you have to develop a personal relationship, and and those people understand you really have the client's best interest. It's not just about a paycheck.
Well, and
It's
then
it's a deeper level.
they might even be like, man, this lady, she's nice. She's going to help us. I believe in her. But
Mhm.
they don't know or think of some of the things that I need to know. Why would she need to know that Uncle Joe was a this or a that? Why would she need to know? Like, they just don't even think that I would need
Well,
to know. So it takes multiple interviews,
yes,
multiple hours, multiple interactions that I can, that it would be even dawn on them to share. Because I'm not asking all these direct questions. I
yes.
mean, mitigation interviewing is not like a private investigator, it is mirroring.
Yes.
Mm.
Well, and if anytime you talk with an attorney, because they're so used to presenting case at law and presenting facts that are there, they don't dig to say, oh, well, this might lead to this or that. It's a chain reaction. You're doing that. You're building the blocks in between the missing pieces, and nothing gets forgotten that way. You leave no stone unturned. Where an attorney, they're paid by the hour. I'm not sure how mitigation is, but
Paid
you
by
know,
the hour.
well, but you make those hours personal. I mean,
Yes.
you're not going to go into that. You had mentioned yesterday when we talked that you have compassion, what is that, fatigue?
Yeah.
Because you go in and your heart is out there on your sleeve.
Yeah.
You don't just have a cookie cutter, cut and dry
Right.
method of trying to find out a few facts. You find out the soul and the heart of people. And I think that's part of the spiritual base that you have going in too.
Yeah, definitely.
That is my
Definitely.
next question.
Okay.
You seem so accessible to people, Victoria. And
hmm
I really want to know, how has your own personal journey with spirituality supported your mitigation practice?
Well, one of the things that I think has helped me so much is learning how to self-empathize.
Mm,
Nonviolent communication is key to offering empathy to myself and to others, and really knowing the difference between empathy and sympathy. And then, of course, I've had burnout moments. Compassion fatigue is very real. And it's not just me, and people can have the symptoms and not know. And I think lawyers do too.
yeah.
Judges do too. I mean, when you hear some of the stories that people have survived, and when you listen to just, you can't even imagine, can't make this stuff up, and that has that secondary trauma syndrome. Since you're not the first person, you're a secondary, you don't have the chemical protection to help you get through those moments. So, witnessing somebody's pain, it's all there, and it doesn't, you just acknowledge it, I would say. And I know where my own personal holes are. I know I'm so much more in tune with my own self awareness. And this job has shed so much light on my relationship with my parents and my grandparents, and what I know maybe came natural to them or didn't come natural to them, to have compassion for them too, raising us. And wow, I just, so amazing. But so, I mean, it's just like, this is the thing, love is a risk. This work is a work of love. If you don't have a heart for justice, I don't recommend it, because it's just not going to work out for you. And if you're not willing to clean up your own backyard, don't think that you can go clean up somebody else's.
Exactly. Oh my gosh. Rule number one.
Rule number one,
Or
right?
be willing to clean it once it's exposed. I mean,
Right.
because sometimes we don't know until
Yeah.
it shows up and you're like, oh crap.
Yeah. And I would say that, learning about integrity in all the different forms and fashions, and where it, can penetrate in your work life versus your home life. Like, I
Yeah.
needed to have integrity with my family. that if I was going to be a successful business owner, mitigation specialist, and be this, warrior of justice, right? Like if I was going to be out here teaching people just how to do this work, and or like, being there for my clients and jurors. I'm there for the judge, I'm there for the DA. Like, even though I work on the defense, like they are a part of this storyline too, to
Right.
getting the outcome that we want. And if I am going to have integrity and work and do this work, why am I not doing it in my own family? And so, having those strong and restoring integrity and relationship with my brother and my mom and my dad, my stepmom, being there to support and try to, just have those tough conversations so that we don't have any emotional ties that are putting us apart. That's where the real success is, honestly, personal success.
I'm so glad you said that, Victoria, because a big part of what you do, not just the trauma part, but knowing when you're triggered by something someone says
Oh,
or
yeah.
something someone has
Oh,
done.
yeah. Oh, yeah. I'm telling
if
you.
Right? We have to work on these things, or at least acknowledge them, bring them to the surface and say, okay, this is my stuff. It's not their stuff. I need to do something about this.
Right. Every time I would go, I had a case in Louisiana, and so I would work there once a week. Excuse me, I would work there once a month for like 5 or 6 days, every other month for a while, then every month for a while. And everybody in this case, 9 out of 10 had complex PTSD. So when I would come home to Houston, like the next 3 days, I just wanted to like drink, go out, go dancing, whatever I could do to just like act like a heathen. I really needed to kind of get all this out and
Decompress.
yeah,
Yeah.
and just do things that just really like kind of honor that part in me that I was kind of identifying, like, just wanting to get the stress out and then like taking on whatever they're doing. And I'm like, I'm not a type of person to go to the club. And I don't really go and like, on my own, but like being in that, in that family, in that community around that criminal case, it really did. That was something that I needed to do to kind of like get out there for myself, smoking cigarettes, like, just being wild, just being able to say like
Every now and then you got to do what you got to do.
Yeah.
Well, there's resonance and there's empathy as far as like, as we say, or if we're empaths, sometimes we take on other people's stuff. But you made a great point. Sometimes if we just allow it and allow ourselves to be immersed in that energy and that, I mean, it's not, we can't say, oh, that's negative or that's bad. It's
no,
like,
the resistance takes more energy than the actual allowance.
you.
So forget about it.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
Thank
Go
you.
with the flow and trust your process. Trust you're on, you're on the path that you're supposed to be on. And you'll get where you need to go, and so will they.
Right.
Yeah.
And that resonance helps you relate. It also helps you connect. And that's an important piece of what you do. So, it's great to not have that self-judgment and say, oh my God, who am I? Listen, you're whoever you need to be in that moment.
Right.
That's right. That's right.
So this is why this work is so important, Victoria.
Thank you.
I mean,
Thank you.
are, again, at the forefront of this.
And I'm inviting, please read the book. Please, if you know somebody that needs the book, that can't afford the book, just message me and I will mail it to them. I want readers more than anything. I want this information to be out there. I want more people doing mitigation. As an entrepreneur, if you want to know the truth, like I think that the entrepreneurial way is the way, because you get to put yourself uniquely into this business and do the things that need to be done in the way that is unique to you. So it's not going to be easy, but building a business isn't easy. It doesn't matter if you're a plumber or a lawyer or a teacher or now a new homeschool teacher of sorts, if you are a healer, all that is a part of it.
I love that. That's a great closing message.
Yeah.
Do you want to say anything else, Dee Dee?
No, we need to wind up the show. Unfortunately, we're running out of time.
I could sit here for
I,
2 more hours.
Yeah.
So again, if you want to reach Victoria, heartofjustice.org, and get the handbook for mitigation. I mean, I'm getting it. I need to have this on hand just in case somebody I know and love needs it. So please go out and buy this book. And you can get it through heartsofjustice.org. Thank you, Victoria, for being on our show. It has
Thank
been
you so much.
so
Thank you.
cool talking to you.
If I can help anybody, please let me know. And if you would like me to come back and talk a little bit more specifically about sex cases or about PTSD or mental health
Definitely.
or, you know, any of these things, cases come up and they're in the news and they're triggering us. I'm happy to come back. I love talking with y'all, and thank you so much for allowing me to be a guest.
Thank you. We'll definitely have you back on. Thanks so much, Victoria. And thank you for joining us today. We will see you soon. Long life and vibrant health. Namaste, everyone.
Bye, everyone.